Sorry missed you. Let's go through everything so you don't miss a thing. So a couple heads ups. First of all, remember this class, we're going to go ahead and turn in your poetry submission, which is a major summative, by the way, and also includes submission to the Creative Communications Poetry Contest for 10% of your grade. Friday is the deadline for your prompt essay submission. So if you don't like how that went, you can always go ahead and email me. I'll go ahead and send you everything you need to know, as well as sending back your work so that you can complete that. Please do that before the end of the day on Friday the 26th. On Monday, April 5th, a couple things to let you know about. The first of which, it's your last day to turn in late work for all of quarter three. So anything that is turned in after the 5th will not receive any credit, so make sure you get it in before then. And also, Monday, April 5th is your last reading map ever. Hooray! So here's all you need to do. Monday, April 5th, do me a favor at about 8:50, go ahead and show up to the homeroom that you've had for the entire first half of the year. Remember that homeroom that you were in for all September, October, November, December, that one, the beginning of January? Go to that homeroom, that Google Meet, and you're going to be there at about, give it like 8:55, just to make sure that you're ready to rock and roll. You're going to take your last reading map, you're going to do great, and you'll be done with reading maps forever, okay? So, good luck. Where have we been? Where are we going? Well, last class, if you remember, we went ahead and we continued our vocabulary study. We looked at our Charge the Light Brigade poem, and we even did our poetry writing group. This class, we're going to do some more vocab study. You're going to get a chance to pick your nonfiction book clubs. We'll go ahead and do our next poem, Dulce et Decorum Est. And last but not least, we'll turn in your poetry summative. So, you ready? Let's do this. If we're looking back at the vocab we've looked at, if you remember, a couple classes ago we looked at vigil, which means to watch or observe. 3 classes ago we looked at anim, which meant mind, will, or spirit. And then last class, if you don't forget, we looked at dis, the prefix dis, which means the opposite of, or differently, apart or away. Which means today, these 3 pictures actually have something in common. They have a root in common. It's the root patri, right? You've got patriot, you've got a patriarch, and then you've got the Jeep compatriot, right? These all use the root patri. Now, why are we going over this? You might end up seeing that in the poem we're looking at today. And also, remember, we're going to be taking a look at how all of your roots and prefixes come back together as we get closer to the SOL. So, let's go ahead and move on. Nonfiction book clubs, I'm so excited! Here's what I need you to do if you're watching this video. Take a look down in the links below in the description of this video and go and find the link for your class. Go ahead and sign up and choose what you think you want for your first, second, third, or maybe even fourth choice of a book and click submit so I can try to get you a nonfiction book you want. I'll go ahead and pause so you can find your class's link in the description of this video and do that now. We'll get you those book club books after break, okay? But for right now, let's dive back into war poetry. If you remember last class in our war poetry unit, we were taking a look at terms like diction, which meant word choice, and we were talking again about the difference between tone, which is the speaker's attitude towards the subject, and mood, which is the reader's feeling when they're going ahead and they're reading a piece. Both of those, both tone and mood, are created by, of course, word choice, right? We talked about rhyme, those matching sounds at the ends of words. We even looked at rhythm, the pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables in a poem that creates a beat. We also do need to talk about figurative language. Remember, that's language not meant to be taken literally. It just creates a vivid impression on the reader. That's things like a simile, that, a comparison between 2 unlike things using the words like or as, or a metaphor, another comparison between 2 unlike things without using the words like or as, or hyperbole, which is an extreme exaggeration, or personification, where, of course, we give a non-human object human characteristics. So that's one thing, but we also want to make sure that we're reminding and kind of keeping an eye out for our sensory language, right? So any kind of language that appeals to the senses, like what we can see, what we can smell, what we can taste, what we can hear, what we can touch, any of those kind of details that will bring this imagery to life, important to keep an eye out for. Now, if we think about tone in Charge of the Light Brigade, right, this is something to keep in mind. So just something to think about. If you were Tennyson, how would you complete this sentence? Either war is blank, but blank, or war is blank and blank. And I actually want you to think about this. Remember, Tennyson was writing about, how deadly and violent the Charge of the Light Brigade was, but we still need to honor the noble 600. So if you were Tennyson, how would you answer this? We're actually going to go ahead and pause so you can think about that. Now let's use that context, that background from last class, to take a look at our poem for today, which is Dulce et Decorum Est. So a little bit of history you need to know. This took place in World War I with trench warfare and gas attacks. The poet Wilfred Owen, he actually enlisted in 1915, and he actually fought in the trenches, so he knows what this was like. In May 1917, he was diagnosed with shell shock, which today we refer to as PTSD, was sent back to England to recover, and he wrote many poems, one of which being our poem today, Dulce et Decorum Est. In 1918, in August, he returned to the front lines, only then just several months later to be killed in action on the front lines at the age of 25. So this takes a look at trench warfare and gas attacks in World War I. So there are some words that you need to know for this poem, things like this Latin phrase, dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. That means it is sweet and proper to die for one's homeland. Okay, this was taught in school, this was on military gravestones, this was memorials, this was a very, very famous phrase. Shad is talking about shoes or feet. Lime is not the green fruit, but a kind of a chemical that can burn through skin. Cud is partly chewed food, like think a cow. Okay. And let's take a look at this poem. It is intense. So let's take a look, okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and have two links down here in the description of the video. The first link is going to be a YouTube link to the read aloud of the poem. The second link is going to be a link to the actual text of the poem. In a minute, I want you to pause this video when I say so. I want you to pause this video and I want you to click play on the YouTube so you can hear the performance of this poem, but I also want you to be reading along. While you're reading along and listening to the poem read aloud to you, I want you just to be listening for Owen, our poet, to go and tell the story of this gas attack. I want you to notice the use of figurative and sensory language that enhances the story of this gas attack. And I want you to see if you can find a favorite line. So again, the two links in the description of this video. Let's go ahead and pause this. Listen while you're reading along, that second link. And let's go ahead and give Dulce et Decorum Est a listen and a read. That's a tough one. Good. Now, the only thing I want to do this time, we're going to do it one more time. And this time I want you to see if you can find a favorite line. So again, the same two links you just used. I want you to listen to it again, okay? And while you're listening, I also want you reading along the screen. So you should be clicking on the first link to hear it, clicking on the second link to read along, and see if you can find a line that stands out to you, that grabs you, that haunts you. Go and do this again. Hence. Now, you missed when we had breakout rooms, but I want to show you the questions we talked about because I think they're important for you to think about. Of course, what's your favorite line and why? But we want to focus on how that figurative and sensory language impacted the mood, the reader's feeling, or the tone, the writer's attitude. The third question is really important. How does this poem's perspective on war differ from the previous two poems we've read? Of course, it differs, but we just want to know how and what details help to create that difference. And then, of course, what poem is your favorite so far and why? So do yourself a favor. Pause the video, take a look at the questions on the screen, answer each of them to yourselves before we move on. Remember, we're watching the evolution of the tone towards war in these poems slowly change. This was a much faster change than what we saw before, but we want to keep this in mind because think where we started from Shakespeare and take a look at where we are right now with Wilfred Owen. We're not even halfway there. So we'll look at more war poetry next class, but for right now, let's go ahead and why not knock off this poetry summative. In Schoology, go to your yellow poetry folder and then go to our poetry summative. We'll pause for you to do that now. Excellent. Let's get this done together, shall we? Step one is actually pretty simple. All we're going to ask you to do is just go ahead and paste in your work. The work that you went ahead and you wrote on another document, paste it in part one. Go ahead and do that now. Step two, go ahead and reflect. What we want you to do now is to go ahead and talk about two decisions you made while drafting or revising. You could be talking about topic selection or how you wrote towards a theme or symbolism you used or figurative language you wove in or maybe the sensory language you were trying to sprinkle throughout your piece or maybe your stanza or line breaks or your repetition, maybe your extended metaphors or even your title selection. But right now, go ahead, do yourself a favor. We need like at least two sentences in each of those two yellow boxes. Go and wrap up your reflection now. Your final step, step three, is just to go ahead and submit it for publication. So you can go ahead and obviously pause this screen to follow along with the steps, or the steps are actually listed right there in your document, whichever is easier enough. We'll go ahead and pause so you can go submit it into Creative Communications right now. Submitted to Creative Communications. Don't forget to turn in your work on Schoology, and hey, you're done. Make sure your prompt essay's turned in, make sure your poetry summative's turned in, and you guys are good for break. So have a wonderful break. Be safe, enjoy, have fun. And if you have any questions, shoot me an email. Good luck. You got this.